Welcome to another I Ching contemplation, and this one is number 63, after completion. The judgment. After completion, success in small matters, perseverance furthers. At the beginning, good fortune, at the end, disorder. Exactly what is it that makes success endure? The sage addresses this question in the theme of this hexagram, which concerns that which makes this success achieved through one's efforts endure. This is what defines the cosmic meaning of completion. As in hexagram 64, the word completion refers to the final completion of the steps of an undertaking that has cosmic approval through transformation. A person's efforts to bring to completion any goal require the helper of transformation. The person may engage in consistent efforts, be guided by the sage, correct his attitudes, and say the necessary inner no's. Thus, he puts in his 100% effort. At this point, he must turn the matter over to the helper of transformation and leave it to the cosmos. Then, the helper of transformation, together with all the other helpers of the invisible world, makes the necessary changes on the primary level of consciousness, transforming the situation. No great achievement can attain enduring success in any other way. Completing also means fulfilling one's true uniqueness through freeing and bringing to maturation the true self with the aid of the sage and the helpers. Success in small matters can be read in two ways. One, one has reached a small or partial success in regard to one's undertaking, or two, that enduring success is to be attained through consistently ridding oneself of the small seed phrases and images that comprise the ego and prevent the personality from achieving its full potential. This hexagram can be saying that while certain seed phrases and images have been removed and a transformation has occurred, other seed phrases or images are still present, which threaten to undermine the success achieved. An example is having said the inner no to a parent who has encroached into one's affairs. But because the person has been trained to feel guilty for saying no to a parent, the guilt enters to undo the no and undermine its beneficial effects. The person needs to rid himself of the poison arrow of guilt he has accepted. See page 551, Deprogramming Guilt. A person may also receive this hexagram when, after making some outer changes, he has achieved balance among conflicting forces. However, because he has not dealt with the cause of the conflict, all he has achieved is a teetering situation like that of being on a tightrope, which requires constant attention and effort to keep the various contradictory forces balanced. At the end, disorder. An example is the person who uses meditation only to calm himself, but as soon as he leaves this state of rest, he is quickly agitated again, because the worries he displaced return. The true purpose of meditation is not a temporary escape, but to seek out the causes of the imbalance, false phrases in one's inner program, and rid oneself of them. Only then does the peace become enduring. In regard to balancing opposing forces, cosmic forces do not oppose each other. The cosmos maintains harmony through the attraction that exists between complementary forces. The idea of opposing forces originates in the demonic sphere of consciousness and needs itself to be deprogrammed. After completion can also concern a person who has achieved success in the form of great wealth, fame, or a top position. Or he may have externally engineered his life in such a way that he now feels secure. However, this security is based on a false self-confidence and pride. At the end, disorder, points to the fate he has created through having achieved his success without the aid of the helpers. His failure is pictured in the image of the fox. His failure is pictured in the image of the fox that, having nearly crossed over in the... I'm going to say this whole line again. His failure is pictured in the image of the fox that, having nearly crossed over the ice, at the last minute falls in and gets its tail wet. Here, the tail represents the small detail of the helpers, which he has left out of his calculations. It also indicates the considerations of things unseen that he has left behind, but which will follow him, like the tail. The hexagram also warns the person who has achieved great progress due to his sincerity against allowing the ego within him to appropriate the success by saying, "I did it," "I have it made," or other such thoughts of self-congratulation. Such phrases need to be treated as spells. Other spells connected with this hexagram have the words always or never in them, which prevent transformations. An example is a spell put on a person that asserts he will never change, that he will always make that mistake, or implies that he is such and such a person by nature, implying always that way. Poison arrows that reflect hopelessness or helplessness also block transformations. Here are the lines. Line 1. He breaks his wheel. He gets his tail in the water. No blame. The metaphor "he breaks his wheels" can refer to the person's bringing his progress to a halt through indulgence in wanting, wondering, and worrying, at the base of which is doubt. He may be wondering, for example, why, after having put in his effort to achieve his goal, success still remains aloof. He may be asking himself whether, in following this sage, he has been deluding himself. He needs to understand that the goal can only be brought to completion by his turning the matter over to the helper of transformation and letting go of it entirely. He needs also to say the inner no to any attempt of the ego to supervise the completion. There will be no blame if, at any point, he corrects his attitude by saying the inner no to his doubts and acts as counseled. Other meanings of getting his tail in the water, mentioned in the main text, include trying to reach completion without the helpers and forgetting to take into account unseen factors that follow him, like the tail. Line 2. The woman loses the curtain of her carriage. Do not run after it. On the 7th day you will get back what you have lost. Wilhelm comments, Wilhelm being the person who originally translated the I Ching from Chinese into German. Wilhelm comments, when a woman drove out in her carriage, she had a curtain that hid her from the glances of the curious. It was regarded as a breach of propriety to drive on if this curtain was lost. In this line, the metaphor is used to indicate a loss of the protection and help given by the sage when a person has put his trust in the wrong kinds of protection, for example, force, arms, power, symbols, etc. Riding in a cage in this line speaks of a person who is riding above the ground out of contact with his common sense. This causes him to lose his connection with reality and to put his trust in his fantasies. Without his common sense, he loses the protection it gives him against being deceived by others. The carriage can also symbolize a wrong way of making progress. Here, the progress has bypassed the help of the sage and the helpers through the person's acting from a vain self-image. Consequently, he has lost the cosmic help and protection he needs, and thus invites encroachment. This reveals the cosmic principle that the person who is free of a self-image does not invite encroachment. If he will rid himself of his self-image and return to humility, he will again draw the protection and help of the sage. See page 541, Freeing Yourself from Self-Images. This line also makes us aware of the cosmic principle that the things we need are free to come to us only when we have detached from wanting them. In running after what is lost, we only lose our self-esteem. Nothing worthwhile can be retrieved or attained in this way. To truly understand this principle, we need to be aware that everything in the cosmos has consciousness and responds to consciousness. Consciousness that is in harmony with the cosmos, that is, that comes from one's dignity, invites the harmonious response of the cosmos, whereas acting from any ego desire causes the helpers to retreat. The reference to 7 days state The reference to 7 days states the cosmic principle that what truly belongs to a person, his dignity and self respect, can be recovered within a relatively short time if he corrects his attitude. The word loss has cosmic meaning only when we speak of losing self esteem, self worth, clarity, and cosmic protection, help, and nourishment. These inner losses, which are the only real losses that can be retrieved by correcting one's attitude, this line can also refer to guilt that undermines what a person has achieved in cooperation with the cosmos. He had attained that cooperation through deprogramming his mistaken beliefs. Now that the problem has been resolved, he returns to his beliefs through feeling guilty for having abandoned them. A related problem occurs when partners who have separated fail to close their inner connection with the help of the helpers. Guilt for having broken vows or promises will keep them bound together in a way that is destructive to both. See page 538, Closing an Inner Connection. The carriage can also symbolize reliance on hopes to keep going. All hoping is a response to underlying fears or doubts. The fear of not getting what one needs, and the doubt that one's efforts will lead to happiness. Such fears and doubts cannot be resolved by hoping, which is pure fantasizing. Fears and doubts come from the ego and need to be addressed by identifying the seed phrases and images that give rise to them. Then they need to be deprogrammed. Once these ego emotions have been addressed and they no longer influence the heart, help comes from the sage and the helpers to help us fulfill the true longing of the heart for love. Line 3. The illustrious ancestor attacks the devil's country. After 3 years, he conquers it. Inferior people must not be employed. In its cosmic meaning, this line refers to the persistence over a period of time that is necessary if a person is to succeed in deconstructing the ego in himself. This process must proceed phrase by phrase and image by image, as these are brought into consciousness in relation to his everyday circumstances. It is not possible to attack the ego as an entity in itself, for it is a complete program of phrases and images that has installing features, protecting features, upgrading features, and reinstalling features. Its deconstruction is carried out with the aid of the helpers. The persistence must be such that it wears the ego out. The person who believes that it is enough to merely shrink it, or that he is capable by himself to contain it, or keep it small, falls under the teasing phrases put forward by the ego itself. This is why the line warns against employing inferior people. After 3 years he conquers it refers to the persistent effort. 3 years does not refer to an actual time, but is saying that the ego can indeed be conquered, and that it is not indomitable as it tries to make us believe. The term illustrious ancestor refers to the deepest sincerity in making this effort. Just need to highlight that. In the meaning given by the collective ego, the illustrious ancestor is the collective ego itself, which has appointed itself as the correct authority to fight evil in the world. The collective ego defines the devil's country as anything connected with animal nature. On this basis, it claims that if a person follows his true nature, he will undermine the social order. Such a claim distracts the individual from seeing how the collective ego, through its conditioning activities, undermines the natural order of society and the harmonious way in which human nature operates in society when not conditioned by the machinations of the collective ego. Indeed, The inferior people mentioned are these mistaken ideas and beliefs, and the devil's country is the true name for the demonic sphere of consciousness created by the collective ego. This line can also refer to a person who, in following the path of freeing his true self, suddenly sees himself as undermining the social order created by the collective ego, and therefore feels guilty. He is unaware that he is reacting to a guilt spell put on him during childhood that is keeping him under the collective ego's control. He needs to free himself from that guilt spell and to recognize that it is the collective ego that undermines the natural order of society. A person can also receive this line when he desires to discipline or discredit another by bringing the matter between them into the open. Doing so, however, is to employ inferior people by causing the other to lose face. He only hardens the ego in him. Such an attempt comes from the ego in himself, which acts from self-righteousness. Bringing the matter into the open only destroys his first intention to have a good effect. Responding to another's incorrect behavior through saying the inner no achieves the correct effect without defaming the other person's character. Inferior people can also be a reference to what a person falsely considers to be inferior in himself and is therefore trying to discipline. For example, he may be trying to rid himself of his animal nature by disciplining his body through ascetic practices, such as excessive time spent in meditation, sitting in contorted positions, or abstaining from giving sexual expression to love. In reality, the inferior people are the poison arrows he has put on his animal nature, which need to be removed because they prevent the renewal of his life force. See page 546. What are spells, projections, and poison arrows? Line 4. The finest clothes turn to rags. Be careful all day long. The finest clothes mentioned is a metaphor for a person's having become free of one or more self-images. His success, however, will turn again to rags if he indulges in any self-congratulations, as in thinking he is superior. Be careful all day long is counsel for the person to keep aware of his inner thoughts and on guard against any new self-image that may tempt him. A person can also receive this line when it appears that he is about to succeed in his undertaking. The line counsels him, however, that he has not rid himself of one or more seed phrases that, if left in place, will undermine his success. The phrase may be, "I did it," an attempt by the ego to claim credit for what was achieved by the helpers. He needs to say the inner no to that idea, otherwise the success will turn to rags, meaning its good effects will dissipate. This line may also call attention to the person who, after achieving success, cannot shake off his doubt that transformation makes it truly endure. Such a person may believe that ups are followed by downs as being the way of life. Rags to riches, riches to rags. If he persists in projecting this belief, indeed, his fine clothes will turn to rags. This line can also refer to the person who thinks he has followed the I Ching's counsel, but it is now apparent that he was not successful. The cause is that his sincerity was half-hearted, so that he has glossed over the remaining issues standing in the way of his success. Such a person may have a variety of false phrases in his program, such as, "Whatever you do, it is not enough," behind which is, "The cosmos only puts up obstacles for us. No one is ever going to appreciate what you do," looking for others for approval, and "Nobody is perfect," implying that putting 100% effort into the task is impossible. These kinds of phrases cause a person to approach his life half-heartedly. This line can also warn a person of another who appears to have corrected himself but who is not yet trustworthy. He therefore needs to remain cautious and reserved until the other person has truly corrected himself. He may also need to ask the sage for protection from that person's wrong intentions. This line can also refer to the person who, upon undertaking his study with the I Ching, believes the task consists in developing his higher self. This idea creates many misunderstandings in his readings of the text and creates a barrier between him and the sage, because this idea is based on a division of his wholeness into a higher and lower self. I like that one. See glossary, spirituality. The image of the finest clothes can also be a metaphor for a magnificent attitude by which a person magnanimously plays God by taking it upon himself to forgive, admonish, or condemn others. He thereby condemns another by telling him, "You have really failed this time," or he lets another off the hook of his fate by telling him that what he has done is okay, or that he forgives him. Such ideas come from the human-centered view of the universe that has put man in the role of representing God or heaven on earth. Paradoxically, this view can cause a person to allow others to run roughshod over him. Such pretensions of possessing power come only from the ego and bring about the fate referred to as above as rags. The person can end his fate if he will rid himself of this magnificent self-image and the seed phrases that have created it, and if he regrets his arrogance. See page 541, Freeing Yourself from Self-Images. Line 5. The neighbour in the east who slaughters an ox does not attain as much real happiness as the neighbour in the west with his small offering. This line has to do with the seed phrases and images that underlie the magnificent attitude mentioned in line 4. Such an attitude is based on seeing humans as charged by heaven or by God with the duty to condemn or forgive others. This idea is also used to authorize persons, groups, or institutions to have rights over other species and things. In the cosmic system of harmony, a person has only the duty to forgive himself for his mistakes once he perceives and corrects them, and the duty to say the inner no to all aspects of the ego in himself or in others with whom he is involved. The ox, traditionally an animal sacrifice, is mentioned here as a metaphor for a person's having sacrificed his animal nature, believing it will placate the higher powers. While proud of his sacrifice, he also envies others who go around their lives simply and are happy. He therefore thinks the cosmos or life is unjust. Receiving this line can be to make him aware that he has acted on the mistaken idea that he has a higher and lower nature, which idea has created a fate. Freeing himself from it and from the self-image of the spiritual person will free him from his fate and bring happiness back into his life. Getting rid of such ideas that slander his wholeness is the small offering referred to. See page 540, Freeing Yourself from Mistaken Ideas and Beliefs. This line also addresses the idea of sacrifice in general, whether it be to gods, higher beings, or sacrifices made to ideas or institutions. Sacrifices are made to placate a higher power or to induce it to be benevolent. They are plainly attempts to make a deal with this higher power and therefore are foreign to the cosmic way. Bargaining is the way of the collective ego, and here is no higher power with which to negotiate. I'm going to say that line again. Bargaining is the way of the collective ego, and there is no higher power with which to negotiate. Humans can reunite with the cosmic harmony through the simple act of perceiving and correcting their mistaken ideas. Line 6. He gets his head in the water. Danger. He gets his head in the water refers to a person who has begun to look back with longing and regret after having crossed the great water and separated from the human-centered vision of the world. For example, a person who has freed his true self has now adopted the idea that he has left his friends and fellows behind. He now thinks he must haul them across. he is unaware that dissolving his bond with his group, the group we, as described on page 493, Hexagram 59, Dissolution, line 4, is the only way to dissolve his adherence to the values of the collective ego and the individual egos around him. It does not mean abandoning the other's true selves or those with whom he is inwardly connected. The sage resides in everyone's presence and is available to help if asked. However, the idea that it is one's duty to haul others across comes from a human-centered belief that humans have to do it all. This view obliterates the existence of the sage and the helpers. Danger refers to the fate that is created by such an exaggerated self-importance. The line also applies to the person who has been blessed by the cosmos but allows the ego to suggest that his life is now lacking excitement. The ego is thus slandering harmony as being too tame and giving one nothing to strive for. Listening to these voices of the ego creates a fate, the danger mentioned. The same danger is also created by self-satisfaction. The truth is that life in harmony with the cosmos is far more inspiring and full of wonders than the treadmill drudgery of living within the parallel reality. Danger can also refer to someone who believes he has conquered the ego in himself once and for all. While it is possible to conquer the ego is the first to suggest that it can be conquered through means other than deconstructing it, as mentioned throughout this volume. The person who boasts that he has conquered his ego has lost touch with his common sense and is under the control of the ego. And here are my contemplations. I'll work backwards. Thank you for listening to this so far. And if you don't want to listen to the contemplations, please, you can leave. And also put in any comments that you want to put in the comments. Tell me how grateful that you are or ungrateful that you are for having this access to this I Ching, this version of the I Ching. Now, this 63, let's go back to this. Actually, I'm not going to work backwards. I'm going to jump around, jump up and get down. All right, so 63. When did I get this? 2nd of September, 2025, line 2 and line 6. Now, I've been going through my own thing right now and calling more into the sage, trying to work out what is going on with my business, what is going on with me bringing my stuff into the world. And if you're someone who runs their own business, you might employ a marketer or a business coach or someone who wants to try and find out like what your niche is and what are you really here to bring your work to? Who are you here to save? Who are you here to help? And this really is a huge part of the collective ego. And for me to try and break this down and make sense of, well, like I need money to pay for rent, to pay for things, to pay for clothes, to pay for life, basically. And even that could be a seed phrase in itself. To pay for bills, electricity. And then at some point, like I'd love to be able to have property, right? I'd love to be able to have a house that I can build in, so I'm not renting a place for the rest of my life again. Because I went straight out of the corporate, mad signed up to the collective ego, where I was able to buy a property when I was 26, paid for it for the most part until I got into a relationship and all turned to shit. Paid for it for the most part in my mid-30s, and I could have easily have just kept that as an investment property, negatively gear it as you do in Australia. And we're just living off that cream, that sweet, sweet cream. But for me, when I realized that I was here to sign up for something else, and I started on this passage, you can call it dark night for the soul. For me, the soul doesn't exist, as this I Ching is revealed to me. It's just another thing to make us feel special. When we are unique, we are unique. The distinction is important, and to discriminate from the two makes a big difference. Anyway, doubling back to this, is that I was hugely subscribed to the collective ego. Probably a collective ego. I probably am, which is why I'm in this. I'm battling with the belief systems to allow them to burn out, like the hexagrams that I've called in recently, and the fifth waiting and joy. where I'm coming face to face with more of these beliefs that I have to do it on my own. And then you have the men's polarity movement, or how to be a man movement, where you need to shop as the provider, as this guy that has to be able to do everything for the entire family system. And I've had coaches that have said, John, you're going to let your entire family down if you don't do this. If you don't buy this package, if you don't take this risk, you're going to let your whole family down. And you buy into it because you carry the contempt, you carry the self-hatred that you're imperfect, And in this I Ching, nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. But to imply the imperfection allows space for things to come in when the collective ego wants that. The collective ego is looking for those cracks in who you are, and then puts that person in there as the solution, or puts that thing that subtly guides you away back into the guilt, or back into the collective ego, because there's so much bias there. You have the confirmation bias that this person's winning because they followed this 5-step program. This person is winning because they moved to Bali, or they've moved to Mexico, or they've moved to Colorado. They've moved, or the Byron Bay. They've moved, and therefore their life is going great. They show their highlight reels on Instagram and Facebook, but then you find out a couple of months later that their relationship was a lie. Their business was built on a lie. All the money that comes into the business is going to pay other coaches and other things, and their main source of income is investment property, or their main source of income is something else that they've prepared up, they've provided for before. And that was me in the beginning, right? I make it look like I was successful, but a lot of my money I was burning through all of my savings when I sold my property. You can give it the look. I'm traveling to Peru. I've got all the bands on my sleeve. I've done the plant medicine journeys. I hang out with shamans. A lot of it is an absolute lie, because you're trying to you're trying to inflate your inadequacy through self-importance. And when I discovered this version of the I Ching, it made so much more sense to me, because I've dabbled in the invisible world. Like, I remember there was a woman that I was following for a while called Josephine McCarthy. She made huge volumes of books how to interface with the invisible world, from how to do rituals, from north, south, east, west rituals, how to connect into the void, how to summon spirits, how to summon egregores, how to summon all the things, right? And then what I realized was that all that is manipulation. I'm still letting my ego get in the way, that I need to interfere with things, interfere with the grid, interfere with this thing, interfere with the weather. It's interfering. The ego convinces you that you need to interfere, but the cosmic way has a flow, it has a pulse, and it's tied into the animal body. And when someone has been trained through survival patterns, like schizoidal type survival patterns, a leaving pattern, right? You leave your body. You're not in your body. You don't want to be part of the earth. When you're trained and coached and led to believe that your body isn't important, you will subscribe to modalities and methods that perpetuate that lie. That you are magical, that you can change the weather, and then you go, I changed the weather. I just looked at a cloud and made it disappear. Or grid working. I went to the grid, and the grid over North America, and I reset it because the geoengineering over there. No, just stop. It's all lies. You're all mucking around. Throwing orgone devices near power lines. So what for? What are you doing? Like, you're living in fear. There's a simpler way of doing all of this than getting your ego involved. And what happens is, when the ego gets involved, it adds to the already existing body armouring that we're afraid to just be ourselves. So we end up with all these random illnesses like cancers, or unexplained psychosomatic stuff, random fatigue, fibromyalgia, all these, endometriosis, all of these things that we think we have the answers for, or don't have the answers for, come from the relationship between the body and the psyche. I saw a post on SUBSTACK the other day talking about the body keeps the score, and how spoonies, I don't know if you're familiar with the term spoonies, but spoonies is someone who has a chronic illness, and the term spoonies came from, you wake up in the morning with 10 spoons, and you have to choose what spoons, and the spoons represent your energy levels and the energy that you have to give to things. So you might spend 2 spoons getting out of bed. You might spend 5 spoons going from bed and making yourself some breakfast, and before you know it, you have no spoons left because you've exhausted all your spoons. But basically what this post was talking about was that The Body Keeps the Score is an ableist book that speaks to that these people's trauma and chronic illness is their fault to solve because they have all this trauma in their body that they're not releasing. And while that might be true on a certain level, a lot of these people live in their head. If you find someone who has a chronic illness, they will live in their head. Why? Because they're trying to keep everything together. This is a leaving pattern injury. They'll try and keep everything together. For them to actually give themselves permission to fall apart is the remedy. What is your relationship with death? What is your relationship with control? And that can be very uncomfortable for people to be with and feel with. Because what I see when someone who's gone through chronic illness, they start researching. They start going down the rabbit holes of who's building this, where are the chemicals coming from, what is all of this stuff, right? And it feeds this outside force. It feeds this egregore outside the self, the collective ego. But the collective ego is playing both sides. It's making you feel inferior. Not to make it a culprit, but it's giving you the fuel to be inferior because you're looking outside of yourself. So you get all this information. The ego loads up all this information. You're like, yeah, I'm carrying all this nutritional information and this thing and this thing and this thing, whether it's this protocol or that protocol, and now it's parasites, now it's this, and now it's radiation, now it's this. When you get stuck in that world, the hardest thing for you to do is let go of control and just allow yourself to fall apart. Well, because maybe you die if you fall apart. And for the leaving pattern person, trying to hold together their humanity is the crux of their injury. Do they want to be here or not be here? Then they start to make bargaining. They try and bargain. I only want to get better if my quality of life gets better. My quality of life doesn't get better, I want to take myself out. I don't want to be here anymore. Okay, cool. You can't do that. But you can try and do that. I'm sure plenty of people are doing it, so you can do it. But you're not going to find the healing that you want. You're not going to find the relief that you want because you're afraid to go through the thing, through the very portal. And this is what this I Ching is speaking to, is that once you develop a relationship with the sage, yes, it might sound weird to you. Yes, it might sound woo-woo. But this text, this volume of hexagrams that have come together to reveal themselves to me in this point in time in my life has been incredibly helpful for me and my client base. Why? Because it doesn't subscribe to the whole guru thing anymore. It doesn't subscribe to this collective ego's way of running a business anymore. You just got to be sincere, and you have your own individual relationship with the I Ching, with the sage, with the cosmic helpers. People that pray and make deals with a higher power are living from ego. Oh, please God, may there be peace. No, all these prayer circles that show up over peace, right? These collective prayer things, chantings around, we've got to make the world peaceful again. Nah, you're just making another deal with a higher power. You're trying to come together and manipulate something because it makes you feel uncomfortable. Sometimes people need to go through the pain and the suffering to realize they're at the root of it all. What are you paying attention to? Is it any of your business what's going on in another part of the world? Oh, it is my business, John. Well, how is it? How is it if your life is falling apart, your health is falling apart, your business is falling apart? That's your business. That's what you need to pay attention to. What's falling apart? Because there's fates in there. There's information in there. Maybe it was built in truth. Maybe it was built in a lie. But if it wasn't built from a place of including the cosmic helpers, what's from the invisible world, it's going to fall apart anyway. It doesn't matter how good your sales strategy is, how many AIs that you deploy to automate your business, how many courses that you take, or how many conscious relating conversations you go into, how many cacaos you drink, how many plant medicines that you drink. If you don't involve the invisible world Whatever is built will fall apart. It will become rags again. Okay, it will become rags again. What else is in here that I want to speak to? The higher and the lower self. This is really important because this book speaks to, this I Ching speaks to higher and lower self in the context of spirituality. In my work and the work of core energetics, bioenergetics, and Wilhelm Reich's work, not Wilhelm, the Wilhelm that translated the I Ching, the lower self is the animal nature. The lower self is the animal nature. And there's lots and lots of other work that helps you get in contact with the animal nature. My work helps you pick out, when I'm working with you with your attraction metrics, attraction mechanics, I help you find two animals that coincide or relate to how you date, or how you show up in relationships, or how you show up in bed, in the bedroom, or in intimacy. Like, some people prefer to be a starfish. A starfish is a predator, right? Some people prefer to be a panther. They like to pounce, like to prowl. In the dating scene, like they might go to a bar or wherever, like prowl, or a conscious dance. They prowl around the outside. I'm here for some conscious dance and some conscious loving. Yeah, But they don't own the predator. So what I help people do is own their animal body. They don't try and dissipate it into this higher, no, I'm only here for conscious dating and conscious love. Divine union. Hieros gamos. No, you're denying the animal inside you. And all that does, when you deny the animal inside you, it just comes out in some leaky, sideways way. And then you wonder why all of your relationships fall apart. Or you keep attracting predators because you're not owning the predator in yourself. So why this version of the I Ching is so potent is because it speaks to the animal nature. Okay, it doesn't make the animal nature wrong, because you are in human form. You're in a human body, and the biology itself, the mitochondria, the DNA, carry information, animal information. You will choose to survive. Your body will choose to survive. For example, even if you just visualize yourself drowning, okay, your body is going to try and rush itself to try and get to the surface, okay? I think drowning would be the worst way to go, because your body goes into full panic of wanting to survive, right? Any kind of asphyxiation, your body goes into full panic to survive, okay? That is animal nature. You're not thinking they're going, I might do a Vipassana now while I'm drowning and find out if I want to survive or not. No, your body takes over. Your body takes over. And when I talk about survival patterns, your body is taking over. I had a call yesterday in a community that I'm actually going to a festival at the end of this year. I'm a guest speaker there. And I spoke about the animal body and how things just take over you. For example, with rage. If you grew up in a family system where there was a lot of rage and anger and explosive anger, when you become attuned to, present to when you get angry, you can feel when it's over, you kind of like come out of it like a thing. In some circles, you might say it's some kind of spirit that's taken over you, or some kind of demonic thing. Sure, I subscribe to that for some while. I can tell you right now that that's useful up until a point, and then you just need to start taking ownership of your body. Because in that world of demonic, demon possession and all that kind of stuff, what they don't look at is the body. The body is wrong. The body is something that is made wrong, and it's just a vessel that's here to carry the soul till infinity. No, the body is here. Life is the gift. Doubling back to the rage, is that when you are not contained in your rage, if you don't see when your rage is bubbling up, you will snap, and in that moment you'll take out that snapping phase on children, on people that you love, all kinds of things. And the stuff that might come out of your mouth could be completely insane. It makes no sense. And then once you come back into yourself again, you can be like, oh my God, that actually happened. But because you're out of consciousness, you're in an overwhelmed state, you haven't got the clarity to unpack it by yourself. You need someone to be like, to take you through those moments leading up to the rage, leading up to that white hot rage that shows up, usually from a leaving pattern person, the white hot rage that just takes over you. That is lower self. Lower self work gives you It gives you a magnifying glass. It increases the bandwidth within your body and the capacity to feel these incremental steps of when you're about to hit this tipping point to get explosive. Usually you've put all of these time limitations and pressures on yourself, and then some random thing comes in, and it's the straw that breaks the camel's back. But the camel's back doesn't break; it explodes into a supernova. Right? So higher self and lower self, understanding that's really important. But in my work, the higher self and the lower self are different things altogether. Okay. The ego can indeed be conquered. We see in the spiritual world, the ego is bad. Okay, the ego is this inherently bad thing, so it makes it a culprit. Therefore, deploying the ego strategy to make it more of the center of focus, right? So in this work, the ego can be conquered by becoming the truest version of the self. All right, and then you just become yourself, and then it's tuning to, well, is this ego or is this self? In human design, we hear about the not self. For me, in my interpretation, the not self is ego. But in that journey, the ego is required to bolster the identity of the person. Because if you have no ego, then you can, no ego in this sense, you can be swung by anybody. Anything just comes your way and you just adapt to it. Yeah, I'll have that. Yep, that's how I'm meant to live my life. When you have no ego. But then the ego, when you start to form an identity, the ego just naturally goes, yeah, I want some of this. I'm going to have my input in this. So we create these spiritual egos around being conscious, around being a priestess or, a masculine guy or whatever it is. You end up getting swallowed by the ego whole. What else is in this? All hoping is a response to underlying fears or doubts. Yes. So here we go. Hoping. So much of the world is built around hope. And hope is this false thing that you might need to anchor in something in the present. For example, you might be going through some health crisis right now and you need some hope to try and keep hope alive. But until you can say no to all these fantasies and actually be present with life itself, all of your hoping delays is the inevitable that you're not in control. You are not in control. The more you try and control, the more the ego wants you to control. Okay? It's really important that these faculties of the collective ego, like hope and faith, are queried, because these are things which push the presence outside of the self. It's a projection into the future. And these fantasies poison the future. What are you keeping hope for? Maybe there's another solution. How do you know that's the best solution? Because you've read about it in a study? Because your favorite influencer has told you? No. These things eventually influence reality, not necessarily in a positive sense, by you being attached to them. And just detaching from everything isn't going to help you either, because attachment and being attached to, especially if there's agreements in relationships, that you agree on something and you hold that person accountable to whatever their agreement is. And sometimes agreements change. Sometimes the thing that you're attached to is no longer healthy for you, and you've got to let it go. Let it go in a constructive sense, not in an apathetic sense, if that makes sense, right? Force, arms, power symbols. I'm going to start to wrap it up here. Now, some of you may or may not know about sex magic. Some of you may or may not know about sigils. Some of you may or may not know about how to do east-west, northwest type magic, okay, spiritual magic. All of these things do, like I think existential kink is one of these as well. There's plenty of other communities out there that use magic to manipulate the powers that be, or trying to manipulate the future, okay? When anybody puts their trust in these things, you incur a fate, okay? You incur a fate. And I've done all of this, okay? I've tried to force my way into things, using brute force, using manipulation, using power in the form of energetic power, sexual symbols, using sigils. Sigils are similar as well, where you try and manipulate you want prosperity or whatever it is. You want to get it. The ego. You need to feel fulfilled by not being, because you're not who you really are. So you look for fulfillment outside of the self. You're not who you really are. So you look for fulfillment outside. I'm going to say that again. You're not yourself. So you look for fulfillment outside of the self. And the ego loves that as an inadequacy. Straight away, your Facebook feed or your Instagram feed or your social media feeds are filled with things that reinforce that bias. Do this course, do that course, do this thing, do that thing, right? So becoming aware of the common centers in the body when you're feeling inadequate. What does inadequacy feel like in your body? Do you know? Because the pre-verbal survival patterns, which are leaving and merging, a little bit of enduring, leaving and merging, are not touched by most talking therapy. They need to be tracked somatically, like through somatic truth-telling. And that comes through the breath. Are you breathing? What was that little flinch that you did there? What did you feel then? I felt this thing run up my back. Cool, let's be with that for a minute. All right. That's what unlocks the power, is getting back in contact with the body. I said I was going to wrap it up here. I lied. The true purpose of meditation is not a temporary escape, but to seek out the causes of the imbalance, false phrases in one's inner program, and rid oneself of them. Only then does the peace become enduring. Meditation has become this fad. Every second person is releasing some form of meditation guided thing to help you, right? It's a bypass. It's a bypass of having a look at what's the actual imbalance. If you're stressed, what's causing the imbalance? I've got bills to pay. I've got this thing. I've got this qualification. I've got this. Yeah, cool. That's the thing. That's the thing. You can say no to things which are trying to force your hand. You can say no to things which are trying to force your hand. All right. You need to come into a relationship with the things that you're forcing to do. It's very powerful when you do. There was something else in here that I wanted to talk to. Where is it? It was about, it's another, what was it? It was something that I wanted to reference in the book. I didn't highlight it. Boo. Not deprogramming guilt. It was something about, wasn't about poison arrows. Bear with me. I may or may not find it. It wasn't in the glossary. I need to find it. I'll do another video on it. I think it was related to, I can't find it right now. That's annoying. So it was making another reference to the book, possibly. That's what it was. It was about relationships and helping the relationship come to a close through help from the invisible world. I'll do a separate video on that, because people try and they go to spiritual, go to psychics, go whatever, go to whoever, and they assume that they can do a cord cutting. And I've helped people do cord cuttings in the past, but without the help from the invisible world, things don't come to a close correctly. Okay, we try and force forgive someone, try and force closure. Okay, these things are outside of our control. I'll also post a link to a SUBSTACK talking about the art, the art of letting go, and how letting go is a lie. The concept of letting go is a lie. And when people come to me that are obsessing about a previous relationship, then we need to go through the feelings, because the relationship itself is just a mirror to what happened in their earlier childhood. And when you can take it back step by step and have a look at, well, what happened here in your childhood? What was your relationship with your dad? What was your relationship with your mum? What was your relationship with inside your own family system? When you start to unpack that, more feelings come online. There's more space to feel, which in turn activates more of the common senses. So people that put their hand up to the universe and say, hey, John, or not hey, John, they say, hey, universe, I need help working out how to feel again. Who can help me do that? The sage can, the invisible world can, and usually if you get put into my sphere, into my field, I can help you do that too. So if you're struggling with learning how to feel, and this feeling, not being able to feel, is influencing your business and your relationships, that's something that I can help you with, because sometimes you need someone that can talk to you. Because when you're already in a leaving pattern, all of this fantasy stuff that comes through, like the invisible world and the sage, and can feel very attractive and very home to you. The challenge can be actually connecting with another human being, actually talking and feeling, in being witnessed by another human being. And that's what I'm here to do. Like, I help you reality check that. I help you get the validation of your life gone so far. Then I help you reality check, well, is this real for you? Is this really how you want to live the rest of your life? And then we remap it. I hope you recreate the entire map of how you've built your life, why you keep attracting the same partners over and over again. And we incorporate the I Ching so you can have that own relationship with the invisible world. You can start to question whatever already invisible world listening that you have of the world, and then question it with, well, is that really what I want to believe moving forward? And then this content, this text will help you start your own journey with what you can't see, but you can feel. That's what I got for you. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you. Comments, love them. Likes, comment, all that kind of stuff. Sharing, I love them. Subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate that. And tell somebody else that you feel like would really get some benefit out of this. I know a lot of people out there are struggling right now, trying to make sense of the world, all right? You don't need to make sense of the world. You just need to choose what's yours, your living signal, what you need to tune into and follow it. And that's what you need to do. Otherwise, you're bombarded with noise and things that are not for you. That is not information that you need to be tuned into. Okay? All right, mad love. Bye.